How do you do? It's Dustaroo, here to announce Behavior's official partnership with several different fast food and restaurant establishments. To celebrate this collaboration, we are proud to announce new sponsored iridescent add-ons for every single Dead by Daylight killer, reflecting a delectable dish served by the killer's sponsored restaurant. Thank you, Behavior, for making me the announcer and spokesman for this delicious add-on campaign. We've reached out to every company to get their reason why they chose to sponsor the killer they did. Enough with the dawdling, let's talk add-ons. First up on the menu is the face of Dead by Daylight himself, the Trapper, introducing his iridescent Big Mac from the sponsor McDonald's. This add-on is called Phantom Traps. Trapper gets 2 Phantom Traps at the start of the match, and every hook replenishes 1 token. When a survivor runs over one of these Phantom Traps, it makes the snap sound that it usually would, but it disappears. Survivors can disarm them like usual traps, but once they are disarmed, they disappear, letting them know that they've just wasted a bit amount of time for nothing. I feel like this add-on would add a little bit more to the Trapper's kit in the way of mind games and manipulation, instead of just straight up loop denial. Make survivors fear a loop because they don't know if it's a Phantom Trap or not. Maybe some survivors take the chance and run on through, and it turns out it's a Phantom Trap. Nothing happened. Or it's a regular trap, and you just ran in there willy-nilly, and now you're getting face camped. Congratulations! We reached out to McDonald's, and their message for this particular sponsorship goes as following. As the face of the fast food industry and a trap for lazy people, the Trapper seemed like a good fit. Now every time you run through a piece of tall grass and get trapped, instead of screaming slurs and curses, you can say, "Ba ba 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 ba, I'm loving it." Very fitting. Thank you, McDonald's, for your sponsorship of the Trapper. Our next serving is the Wraith with his iridescent peri-peri fries from the sponsor Nando's. With this add-on, the Wraith can send a cloaked clone forward to Bing Bongs if a survivor is within 8 meters away. This clone is on a 10-second lifespan. It's also on a cooldown of every 30 seconds. So the Wraith's whole thing is stealth. So I feel like this cloaked clone could be used in a variety of different ways. One, you can check if a generator has a survivor next to it, if you want to maybe double split your attention to multiple gens. Use it during a loop. Send him one way and he'll think you're uncloaking on one side of the loop and you're actually uncloaking on side of the other. Hell, even just randomly toss it into the trial and maybe you can find a stealthing survivor. The possibilities are endless. When reached out to Nando's, they said this. Nando's is a proud African-founded company, and with that we wish to show support for our brethren in the Wraith. Thank you, Nando's, for sponsoring the Wraith. Next up, we have a whole helping of the Hillbilly, with his iridescent Crunch Wrap Supreme, and yes, his sponsor is Taco Bell. With this add-on, the Hillbilly leaves a flame trail that lasts up to 30 seconds in the trial during a chainsaw sprint. When survivors attempt to cross this flame trail, they scream and are hindered by 5% for 3 seconds. So with this add-on, the Hillbilly can basically use zoning tools and of sorts. If he were to chainsaw through a loop, it could slow a survivor down enough that they can't get a second loop around and have to immediately throw down a pallet. Maybe you do it so you cut down one section of the map and you're aware of any survivor that needs to cross to get to the other side. Hook saves, generators that have been almost completed, you can trap it for a very short time. Instead of just having to Billy Tech around every loop, now you can add a little tool to help things go a little faster. When reached out to Taco Bell for why they sponsored the Hillbilly, they said, "People always make jokes about how our food makes them run real fast to the toilet, so we wanted someone who groans while sprinting at top speed. And I think they picked just right." Thank you, Taco Bell, for sponsoring the Hillbilly. Now let's get a taste of the Nurse, with her iridescent Baconators, with the sponsor, Wendy's. With this add-on, any survivor the Nurse phases through is oblivious and blind for 20 seconds. So if the Nurse manages to fly through a survivor and not quite get the hit, they won't know when the nurse is actually teleporting to them, or if she leaves them early. Simple and maybe not super powerful, but I had the feeling a lot of people don't really want any more powerful add-ons for the nurse. When reached out to Wendy's for why they sponsored the nurse, they offered a strange reply. They wrote, "LOL, McBasics would pick the Trapper. Shows they don't even play the game. They deadass pick Trapper to represent them. Everyone knows how much of a W the nurse is. L. Donalds." Thank you, Wendy's, for sponsoring the nurse and offering such a unique reply. It's fresh and fermenting. That's right, it's The Shape, aka Michael Myers, with his iridescent Whopper, sponsored by Burger King. With this add-on, the survivor passively regains 3% evil every 10 seconds. What this means is Michael Myers will always have the ability to activate his power and will never run out. So many times you're playing Michael and you get to tier 3 and maybe you have a bad chase and you've permanently lost a good amount of your power. That maybe you will be able to snowball later, but you don't have a power anymore, so it's just not gonna happen. With this, it's a slow regen, so let's say you drain a survivor very early on in the match. It'll take a while for them to get a substantial amount of evil back. You can't just constantly follow them and constantly drain them. 3% every 10 seconds sounds like a lot, but in reality that's a few minutes before you can actually get back to full recharge, and in a few minutes a lot can change. When we reached out to Burger King, they offered a very heartwarming statement. "We ride or die for Burger King Myers. He's been repping the king since the jump, and it's time we returned the favor. Let's give a cheer for Burger King Myers finally being playable." Here comes a sickly sweet smell. Are you sure? I don't want to talk about her. Come on, like, who wants... Ugh. Here's the hag with her iridescent peace feast from Mary Brown's Chicken. With this add-on, the hag can pick up placed traps and toss them at her range. If it were to come into contact with a survivor, she can teleport to it. She basically scoops a handful of ground and tosses it, much like a frisbee, as you get a certain amount of range, but then it drops downward. The further it goes, the faster it drops. Basically, it's hard to make add-ons for the hag that don't make her way better at camping. I gave her something that could maybe be used in chase. Maybe the hag would engage in more chases instead of camping if she could immediately get into a chase, similar to how the Singularity teleports to them, but much easier, with less setup. Of course, she does have to ride it on the ground first, then pick it up, then throw it, but it is something. When we reached out to Mary Brown's Chicken, they gave us this. The hag is a fan of fresh meat, and there is no meat more fresh than Mary Brown's. Very impersonal. Thank you, Mary Brown's. Thank you for sponsoring the hag. What's that good smell? It's the Doctor with his iridescent Super Lamb Donair with their sponsor, Donair Affair. With this add-on, when the Doctor's illusion spawns, if in line of sight of survivor, it follows like a knight NPC and swings on a survivor when in range and then disappears. Essentially, this would turn those quickly flashing Doctor projections that are very obviously not the Doctor and turn them into something that the survivors can fear and manipulate their movement. Is that actually the Doctor? Did I just turn around and that is actually the Doctor who just ran up on me? Or is that one of his illusions? It could add more mindfuckery to the Doctor's kit. When we reached out to Donair Affair, they replied as such. The Doctor seems like a fun bloke, and we stand with the medical professionals. Not sure if they really understand the extent of what the Doctor's, medical experience is, but still, thank you for sponsoring the Doctor. Sounds hot and ready with the Huntress, with her iridescent original style wings, brought to you by Hooters. With this add-on, it allows the Huntress to toss 2 hatchets at the same time that veer off both to the left and right. So instead of shooting straight down, you get 2 angles that split out, much like a shotgun does, with spread, adding for a little bit of different gameplay between the Survivor and the Huntress. Do you stay standing in the middle and hoping both of the hatchets fly right next to you? Or is the Huntress aiming a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right and attempting to straight shot you and juke you out? Might not be that great, but I think could be an interesting way to play the Huntress. Especially since you could hit 2 survivors at once, if you played your cards right. When we reached out to Hooters, they said, Hooters is looking to embrace tall and strong women, and one that fights bears with an axe seems to be just about right. Also, she has an owl mask, right? I do believe she has an owl mask, so sure, she is the perfect spokesman for Hooters. Thank you, Hooters, for sponsoring the Huntress. Nothing like a little barbecue, am I right? Here is the Cannibal with his iridescent chicken and biscuit combo. From Popeyes. This add-on, when Bubba has a tantrum, for each token placed into a tantrum, Bubba gains a 3% speed increase and a random effect placed onto the next survivor hit during the chainsaw sweep. These effects range from hemorrhage, mangled, deaf, knockout, oblivious, all applied on the downed survivor. But Bubba only has 30 seconds to use this ability after leaving his tantrum. Basically, this is either a catch-up mechanic or an interesting new way to play with Bubba. That you intentionally tantrum yourself in a corner of the map where the survivor can't get away. It's something. And it is a little bit balanced, as survivors can see him running into tantrum and immediately go, I need to get the hell out of here. When we reached out to Popeyes, they gave us a simple response, but a fitting one. Bubba knows meat. Bubba pops eyes. Bubba shops at Popeyes. I don't know why they made it rhyme, but who am I to judge? Thank you for sponsoring the Cannibal. Here comes a sweet helping of the Nightmare with his iridescent ice cream. Sponsored by Baskin-Robbins. With this add-on, Freddy can now use fake pallets and snares in the same match. They are taken from the total amount of tokens. Very simple add-on. Freddy starts with what? 10 tokens that he can either have as dream pallets or snares. With this, he has the availability of both. When we asked Baskin-Robbins why they chose to sponsor the Nightmare of all killers, they gave us this short response. We just feel Freddy would speak to a lot of our clientele. That is all. I don't know what they mean by that. Anyways, moving on. Our next mouth-watering add-on is the Pig with the iridescent lobster classic sandwich from Quiznos. With this add-on, the traps of the Pig are on all of the survivors' heads from the start of the trial and cannot be removed. Every 60 seconds, the trap will injure the survivors and cause them to scream out in pain and cause the hemorrhage effect for 30 seconds. While removing a big part of the Pig's power, this will give her tons of tracking potential and basically one-shot downs. A nice twist on how we would play Pig. And offering not necessarily a slowdown in its own way, but easier chases. We asked Quiznos how are they still in business, and then we asked them why they sponsored the Pig, and they gave us this response. As a forgotten food chain, we, just like the Pig, feel like we're an underappreciated gem. We're hoping, with the last of our marketing budget, we can get the Pig played a little bit more, and maybe Quiznos back into people's hands. Isn't that nice? Thank you, Quiznos, for sponsoring the Pig. Finger licking good with the Clown. The Clown's add-on is called the Iridescent Bucket of Chicken, brought to you by KFC. This introduces hybrid bottles. The Clown can choose whether to toss a speed bottle or a slow bottle at first. After first contact, the gas cloud switches over, whether it's slow or speed first. If a survivor or the Clown touches it, it switches over to the other effect. Example, if the Pig were to throw a speed bottle and then interact with said speed bottle, it now becomes a slowdown. If the Clown throws a slow bottle and interacts with the slow, it becomes a speed bottle. Just adding a little bit of more dynamic use for both of these bottles. Because When you see a clown... Do you see clowns? Wait, do people see clowns? Sometimes? Okay. When you do see a clown, usually they're not going to be using the speed bottle, not very often at least. With this effect, maybe we can get a little bit more use out of the speed. When we reached out to KFC, they gave us this response. We ask you to think of a more fitting character for a KFC consumer than the clown. All he does is lick fingers. Clown knows flavor, and flavor lives at KFC. Thank you, KFC, for sponsoring the clown. Do you smell what the spirit is cooking? 'Cause it's iridescent orange chicken from Panda Express. With this add-on, randomly while phasing, a fake spirit will lunge out for a split second where the spirit is currently facing at the moment. The spirit has no control over this, it's more like a passive phase. While she's invisible, it'll look like she's leaping out of her phase to strike the survivor, maybe causing them to panic and maybe not able to get to a pallet or a window perhaps, because they get faked out. A nice little mind game add-on. When we reached out to Panda Express, they gave this response. There was no Chinese killers, so we thought this was close enough. Not a very touching response, but a response indeed. Do you know what I could go for right now? Some iridescent bacon cheese dogs from Five Guys. That's right, this is the Legion. When the Legion vaults downed pallets or windows in the Feral Frenzy power, they drop nails on said vault, causing any survivor to interact with said vault to be injured or downed and have the deep wounds applied. This effect only lasts for 30 seconds, but can be applied to as many vaults and dropped pallets as they can in a single power. You could get 4 windows, all marked with permanent injury for 30 seconds, if you're fast enough. It's basically like a more dangerous bamboozle. Maybe they have a one-shot down and you just have to eat the injure. Maybe. Most of the time this would just be a denial effect. Kind of a twist on the iridescent where when they vault down pallets they break, but instead they can cause injury to the survivor. When we reached out to Five Guys, they gave us this answer. They are almost 5 guys, and that is good enough for us. I couldn't have said it better myself. There's a party in my mouth and the plague is invited with her iridescent waffle fries, brought to you by Chick-fil-A. This add-on adds the effect of a second bar that passively builds up post-infection. If a survivor does not cleanse 100 seconds after becoming fully sick, they fall into the down state. This is basically the add-on to incentivize survivors to cleanse. They finally have a punishment for not interacting with pools to cleanse. I just think this would be an interesting way to actually have the plague use her power, and keeping it as an iridescent, we wouldn't see it in many games. And I feel like the 100 seconds would be just enough time to do whatever you need to do and head to a fountain. When we asked Chick-fil-A why they would sponsor the plague of all people, they gave us this response. We wanted to sponsor Plague as someone who stands by their principles and beliefs. And we know our customers would feel the same. We happily welcome the Plague in the Chick-fil-A family. Isn't that heartwarming? Let's dive right into the Ghostface with his iridescent burrito bowl from Chipotle. With this add-on, the Ghostface can no longer stalk and expose his prey, but applies a permanent oblivious status effect to any survivor hit for the rest of the trial. This add-on is just here to amplify my most personal favorite effect of the Ghostface, and that's his constant stealth. He may not be that strong, but he does keep you focused, and doing gens a little bit more exciting than just holding M2 and waiting for the heartbeat to come by. When we reached out to Chipotle, they gave us this statement. The Ghostface likes to spend his time making his perfect target and his perfect moment. Just like at Chipotle, you take your time to make the perfect custom meal. Thank you, Chipotle, for sponsoring the Ghostface. Who's that adorable little guy? That's right, it's the Demogorgon, with his iridescent buttermilk pancakes from IHOP. With this add-on, any survivor sealing a portal while the demo is traversing the Upside Down is incapacitated for 30 seconds. So, if you're sealing a portal, and the demo happens to teleport across the map, you will no longer be able to do actions such as healing, gen repairs, totem cleanses, sealing of portals for 30 seconds. This puts a little bit of a fire under the survivors to just do gens. and let the portal be. Or take the risk and maybe seal a portal when he's not expecting it. It could have great potential, but could also just make gens go faster. When we reached out to IHOP, we got our response, but it was intercepted along the way. Netflix has redacted this statement. When asked why, we got no response. Only a link to a mobile Stranger Things game that doesn't even work anymore. So, there it is. Thank you, IHOP, for sponsoring the Demogorgon. Coming in hot, it's the Oni with his iridescent cheese sticks from Papa John's. With this add-on, the Oni can never manually absorb blood, but any blood within his absorbed radius is automatically absorbed at a reduced 25% rate. So the usual blood value you would get is reduced by 25%. But you don't have to manually pick it up or slow yourself down. You can constantly keep the chase up while building up your power passively. Since it's an iridescent, it would be very rare, but very strong. And I think it speaks for itself. Just no slowdown during a chase. Constantly keep the pressure up. When we reached out to Papa John's of why the Oni, they responded with this. The Oni regularly rips out tongues of those that oppose him. The more tongues he removes, the more likely people will be able to enjoy our food, and we are grateful for the Oni in this regard. Thank you, Papa John's, for sponsoring the Oni. Nothing like an early morning Deathslinger with some iridescent Timbits from his sponsor, Tim Hortons. With this add-on, the Deathslinger can now break walls and pallets with his Redeemer rifle, which only takes 1.8 seconds to break a pallet. This just gives him the opportunity to long-range destroy objects that he may not want to get close to. Makes breakable walls and downed pallets much less of a time waste, and can keep him on the ball. When we reached out to Tim Hortons, they gave us this answer. Deathslinger is a prime example of a hard-working and rugged working man who needs to start off his long day of impaling criminals with a spear gun with a strong cup of local coffee. And Tim Hortons has him there. Thank you, Tim Hortons. Who wouldn't be down for a fresh slice of the iridescent pepperoni pizza, brought to you by Pizza Hut, for the Executioner, aka Pyramid Head. With this add-on, it allows the Executioner's pools of torment to be left behind after every punishment of the damned. They last 20 seconds in the trial. This basically means anytime Pyramid Head strikes with his ranged ability, it leaves a pool of torment behind. Not for a long time, but for enough time to make it more likely that a survivor will be tormented. What did Pizza Hut have to say about this? Our customers love triangles, and the Pyramid Head seems to love them just as much as they do. This partnership felt like a no-brainer. Well, I agree with you there, Pizza Hut. I agree with you there. Why would you need anything else when you have the Blight's Iridescent Mango Hurricane? Brought to you by Booster Juice. With this add-on, Blight can charge his power, and for each token consumed, he gets an extended range before needing to slam, and a slight speed increase. Instead of needing to bash wall to get enough distance and speed, instead, the Blight can choose to charge it all at once. And for a slight decrease, he could make great distances and still hit his survivor. Reaching out to Booster Juice, they said, "We just know if the Blight was in need of a tasty drink to keep them energized from sweating all day, Booster Juice would be his choice. Blight loves his juice. That he does. That he does." I suppose we should just get to it. Here is the twins with their iridescent double-double burger from In-N-Out. With this add-on, Victor can enter a locker with a survivor who hides inside, and after 5 seconds of fighting, Victor and the survivor will fall out, leaving Victor there to show Charlotte the killer instinct and having the survivor slugged on the ground. Basically, this just adds a little bit more strength to Victor being far away from Charlotte, and a locker not being an immediate escape. When we reached out to In-N-Out, they gave us this troubling answer, but an answer nonetheless. We were originally going to pass on this ad campaign, but the twins were basically free, so why not? Plus, we enjoy puns over here. Fair enough. Fair enough. Here comes the star himself, the Trickster, with his iridescent iced Americano from Starbucks. With this add-on, the Trickster's main event is replaced with one singular blade that can one-shot. Think of Huntress's iridescent hatchet, and it applies in much the same way. It has double the windup of a regular knife, but still, one knife, one down. Once again, it speaks for itself, changing from a multi-down tool potential to an early chase ender. When we reached out to Starbucks, they gave us this response. We love the Trickster's flair and passion. He's a man driven solely off doing what he likes, and we at Starbucks respect his hustle, but don't agree with the killing thing. But busy people always will be in need of coffee, and we've got him there. Thank you, Starbucks, for sponsoring the Trickster. What does that sound? It sounds loud. It sounds like the Nemesis with his iridescent root beer, brought to you by A&W. With this add-on, Nemesis receives a third zombie, but at the cost that all zombie speeds are reduced by 20%. A very strong add-on, but also makes zombies much less effective. I think it'd be a fun addition and would bring us a new zombie to play with. When we reached out to A&W, they gave us this statement. Nemesis, out of all the killers we've seen in DBD, is all about family. He and his 2 children work together to fulfill their goals, just like our burger family works together to feed the people of the world over. We are aware of the twins, but we do not want to feed our customers trash. Understandable. Thank you for sponsoring Nemesis, A&W. We appreciate your sponsorship. You opened the box, and he came. That's right, this is the Cenobite, with his iridescent jumbo jack, from Jack in the Box. With this add-on, Pinhead's chain can pierce through survivors, hitting multiple at one time. This would help decentivize survivors' body-blocking chains, and maybe make them split apart. Plus, it could add some interesting little clips of actually get multiple survivors in one hit, which would be interesting. When we reached out to Jack in the Box, they said, Pinhead's fascination with boxes made him enduring to Jack in the Box, and also his enjoyment of spreading suffering, just like Jack in the Box. I appreciate your patronage, Jack in the Box. Thank you for sponsoring the Cenobite. Can't wait to get another bite of The Artist with her iridescent onion ring tower, brought to you by Red Robin. With this add-on, the artist's first and second bird cannot damage the survivor unless they are hit with birds already, but the third will always be a red crow, which will always damage the survivor, no matter of the range or status. Basically, you can snipe people across the map, but only with your third bird. It wouldn't be entirely broken, as you could see the red bird flock flying at them from across the map. And I think it would be an interesting add-on to the artist overall. One we don't see really that much in Trials. Reaching out to Red Robin, they said, simply, Big Red Bird Lady just made sense. And alas, I have to full-heartedly agree. Thank you, Red Robin, for your sponsorship. No introduction necessary, it's Sadako, or the Onuro, with iridescent biscuits and gravy from Waffle House. With this add-on, it lets Sadako see out of her TV cameras before teleporting. Survivors that are within line of sight of said TV while Sadako is staring through them received passive growing condemned as long as she is staring at them. Basically gives her better options on knowing when to teleport, and maybe getting a sneaky bit of charge off on unsuspecting survivors who aren't paying attention to their condemned bar. When we reached out to Waffle House, we got the response of, Sadako is a surprising brawler, and at Waffle House we know something about scraps, and we want Sadako in our corner. Thank you, Waffle House, for sponsoring Sadako. Ooh, it's getting chilly in here. Is it maybe the Dredge with his iridescent blizzard, brought to you by Dairy Queen? With this add-on, every 15 seconds a random locker will make the Dredge entering sound, making you think he had teleported to that locker, but is indeed a false flag. Survivors can tell if they're close enough that he's not actually in there, as there's no leakage that the Dredge usually has when he enters a locker. So you're able to tell if it's real or not, but sometimes it can be enough to knock you off of a gen. And we just add a little bit more fear in the match, and that's what I'm all about. Blizzard's statement with the Dredge is, Just like our blizzards, Dredge is an enjoyable blend of random stuff to make something complete. Alright, fitting description for a blizzard, I suppose. He doesn't have a lot of time, so let's make this quick. It's Wesker with his iridescent $5 footlong from Subway. With this add-on, it allows fully infected survivors to infect both gens and vaults, and even other survivors, with the Ouroboros virus. On vaults and generators, the effect only lasts for 60 seconds. But when applied to a survivor, they're stuck with it. Basically just more incentive to get off gens and go spray yourself, or you may be dooming your team. When we reached out to Subway why they sponsored Wesker of everybody, they said, Wesker only gives people 7 minutes. He's a busy man with a busy schedule, but still wants a personalized and specialized meal. And we can get him his food with time to spare. Thank you, Subway, for sponsoring Wesker. It's the Knight with his iridescent cheese slider from White Castle. With this add-on, if 2 survivors are marked within the same hunt, a second character will chase both survivors. Meaning, if survivors are grouped up and you hit them both with the Knight's power, there are 2 guard summons happening at the exact same time. When we reached out to White Castle, the response we got was, just like the Knight needs a few people to do one job, you will need multiple of our sliders to feel like a meal. Thank you, White Castle, for sponsoring the Knight. Unfortunately, we have to mention, but it is the Skull Merchant, with her iridescent beef dip from Arby's. With this add-on, drones can no longer expose survivors, but will wander around the map and follow survivors that fall within their range. They follow the survivors for 10 seconds even after the survivor has left said range. But after that point, they will forget and patrol again. Survivors, anytime they enter the range, are oblivious, and will be oblivious for 30 seconds afterwards. When a Skull Merchant drops a drone, it'll head in the direction she was looking at that moment, and then will eventually patrol the map, much like Nemesis zombies. These drones can be disabled, but will leave a tracker on the survivor for 80 seconds. So basically, this would just turn Skull Merchant from a 3-gen killer into more of a constantly information-based killer who can track really well, but isn't stuck tracking one location or locking down a site, but rather having personalized info across the map at all times. I'd be happy if this was just her power base and you could balance around that, but let's give it as an iridescent add-on. When we reached out to Arby's of why the Skull Merchant, who would ever do that, they gave us this. We understand how people feel about us. And when we asked to sponsor another killer, they spat on us and said we can take the Skull Merchant or nothing. So, here we are. Thank you, Arby's, for sponsoring the Skull Merchant. I don't think anyone else would've. It will be tasty, maybe even delicious, with the Singularity and his iridescent Beast-style combo from Mr. Beast Burger. When an EMP goes off with a Singularity in range, Hux goes undetectable for 45 seconds. Adding a little bit of payment for when a survivor uses an EMP right next to Hux, making him a bit stronger. Now that you don't have a slipstream to be worried about, you now have to worry if he's actually still chasing you. When we reached out to Mr. Beast, we got this response. Mr. Beast Burger is the future of food, and an ever-evolving being that with enough time will conquer the universe is very in line with Jimmy's goals of human submission. LOL. Thank you, Mr. Beast, for that, great remark. Thank you for sponsoring the Singularity. And that is everything. Thank you, Behavior, for making me the official spokesman for this add-on campaign. Why don't you leave a like or comment down below about what kind of sponsorship you would like to see next. Maybe if the engagement is enough, Behavior will let me do this again. Thank you. And please, subscribe. I'm Dustaroo. I'll see you all real soon. Bye-bye.